Cinema St. Louis's The Lens is now the takeup.com, a place to gather after the film is over. I'm your host, Joshua Ray, and fear not, all your favorite episodes of The Lens featuring all your favorite guests are still here in your feed, just a little refocused. Stay subscribed to us here for future episodes, and you can follow along for new ones and more at the Takeup STL. Thank you for joining us on The Lens, a Cinema St. Louis podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Ray, and while we're on a bit of a summer vacation, occasionally we're going to come on and do some now showing. We're going to be back to The Lens proper in September with our next miniseries about the films of Nora Ephron and Nancy Meyers. But until then, we're happy to present the Golden Anniversaries Film Festival talks with some key speakers talking about some of the great films of 1972. And you can go to cinemastlouis.org to see information about upcoming events, including upcoming Golden Anniversary talks you can see in person or online. So Andrew, we're on vacation, but we're working on our vacation. It's so us. It's so us to be doing that. But we have movies that we saw and we wanted to talk about them. Let's talk about the one that we've both seen first. That is Mad God. I know you've got capital T thoughts about it. Take it away.
Well, my main thoughts is that I loved it, but I think it's the kind of movie that I was sort of primed to already love. I like anime. I'm a big animation buff. I like weird, grody movies. This is a very weird, very grody movie.
It's the grody-esque.
I think I tweeted something about how the idea of Phil Tippett started on set demanding, I will increase the GD filth. And that like terrified PA sort of cowering before his filth. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know, can we even really talk about the plot?
I have seen it and I cannot tell you what the plot is. I guess I think, you do it because I'm not going to do it right.
No, I wasn't even an attempt. I think I did. I mean, there's some Dante in there. There's some like Passion of the Christ cycle in there, but it's, I wouldn't call it a full on avant-garde film, but it's starting to push up against avant-garde. Like it's full on surrealism. Like there's not much of a narrative. It's 110 minutes of just stuff being thrown at you and horrifying visions from excavated somewhere out of Phil Tippett.
Yeah, and so he's the special effects guy behind Jurassic Park, won an Oscar for, and just like a very important person in the field, and has been working on this film for 30 years. And it does feel like it is coming from, like, he opened up his chest and reached out, and here's all the viscera. And that's a reference to a scene in the film that made me very, very sick. I'm not as high on it as you are. In fact, I probably don't like it, but it's also like, it's the difference between musical taste. It's like how you like Rob Zombie's music and I don't, and I'm just over here listening to Beach House. But I
like Beach House too, though.
Yeah. But like,
you're wearing a Slow Dive shirt right now, and I'm like, ooh, I love Slow Dive.
Ooh, it's so cute too. But I can appreciate its artistry and what it's up to. You said an hour and 10, or you said 110 minutes, but it's only an hour and 10 minutes. It is so short, and within this, he packs in. Oh,
that was my mistake. I was thinking of another film. Sorry.
No, you're totally good. It's just funny because it does feel so big, and I don't know.
I think rather than sort of discussing whether the plot works or whether it even has a plot, I think you just need to recommend the film. Like I would recommend people actually watch the trailer,
right,
which is you can find anywhere online. And then like, just based on that, decide, you will know instantly whether this is your jam. I think everybody who like saw it and said, "Oh hell yeah!" Like knew what they were getting into. And I think if you watch it and you go, "I have no idea what to think about this," maybe you won't enjoy it. But I think for the set, maybe that's like the most anodyne critical assessment you could possibly make. People who will like it will like it. People who don't like it won't like it. But it really is that it really is one of those films where you're either on, this is like top 5 movies of the year for me, and you're like, meh. So I think you're either on its wavelength or you're not.
It is ooey, it is gooey, it is industrial, it is occasionally very colorful, it is disgusting. Do you have a favorite creature? I do. Mine is the like cancerous polyp man who has a great set of dentures.
I kind of like, so this is like my unconventional pick, I guess. I kind of like the fluffy, like wool automata people who are just constantly being murdered in horrible ways.
You just you hate the masses.
No, I
Destroy the
love them. Like
proletariat.
no,
Okay.
no, I love them. I think they're like the coolest. There's a lot more Baroque creature designs in this film. It's something about those
Yeah.
little woolly, silent people being squished over and over again.
You know what they remind me of? You know that video of the raccoon who picks up some cotton candy to wash it, to eat it, and it just
Yeah.
disappears in his hands? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, more ooey gooey, disgusting stuff, right? Flux Gourmet, Peter Strickland's new film. You're reviewing it this week. I have not seen it yet,
Yeah.
but I am excited.
Yeah. You're a Peter Strickland fan, right?
Yeah, I'd say the only exception is In Fabric.
Oh, you didn't like In Fabric.
No, no, I didn't. So where does it fall within Strickland?
It's kind of unusual. I mean, I think when you see it, it's obviously a Peter Strickland film. It's in some ways sort of like very a Peter Strickland film, but it's also feels like an outlier compared to all his previous work. For those who don't know, he's the director who made Barbarian Sound Studio and The Duke of Burgundy, and as just said, most recently in Fabric. This is his new film. It's the closest he's ever come to making a full-on comedy. I think there's almost no horror in it at all. It made me uncomfortable. It made me tense, but I was never really scared. There's some really sort of grotesque stuff in it, but not in a way that like makes you necessarily squirm in your seat the way a gory horror film does. For those who don't know, so in true Peter Strickland fashion, it takes place in some sort of alternate, parallel, slightly off center from our world setting where a profession called culinary sonic artists are a thing. And these are like performance artists who blend food and sound and audio together to create these weird performance pieces. In the universe of this film, like this is a viable career choice. This is like something you could do and become like a huge star doing. So like you have to accept going in that it's a slightly weird world that you're watching. And it all takes place at like one institute or it's a huge like mansion where these artists can come in and have like a month-long residency. So the movie's following one trio of these performance artists during their month-long period and the things that happen to them, all narrated from the standpoint of an outsider, a guy who's there to sort of write the book for the art piece. And he's kind of like, he's not really an artist himself. He's just kind of like a hack writer. So he's kind of standing on the outside narrating the whole thing. I can't even really describe it beyond that. Like it kind of goes to some crazy places, but I think if you've seen Strickland's other films, you know what he's doing. He's very sort of enamored with 1960s and 70s and 80s, like Euro horror. He has some giallo influence in him. There's a moment in this movie where like three characters are wearing like these black cat suits, like head to toe black cat suits that look exactly like the cat suits that the guy, the hero, anti-hero wears in Mario Brothers Danger Diabolic. And like I immediately went set up and went, and I immediately set up and went, oh. There's no point to it. Like it's just sort of part of Strickland's fetishes and like interesting the films that he loves. So he's putting these little homages into it. But I guess I haven't really talked about whether it's good or not. I liked it, but I'm still sort of wrestling with it. I'll review it later this week. It definitely feels like the closest Strickler's ever come to making a full-on comedy, but it's a very dry kind of absurdist comedy. It feels maybe this, I don't know if this means anything yet, but my brain is coalescing around the phrase, this is Peter Strickland's Barton Fink.
Okay. I can get down with that. I could get what is that? What does he keep saying in Barton Fink? Oh
I'll
my
show you
God.
the life of the mind. It's John
I'll show you
Goodman.
the life of the
Like
mind.
big
Peter
line. Yeah.
Strickland said, I'll show you the life of a Sonic chef.
It's funny. Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones is in it, like having a ball playing like the most absurd sort of society lady ever. Um, it's all kind of played for dry humor, but I do recommend it. It's out on VOD. It just came out on VOD now. So Peter Strickland, Flux Gourmet, pretty much on every platform you can find.
Cool. Almost literal opposite would be Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris.
Feel
There's
goody.
Yeah, there's no like Sonic ushy gushy in this one, but it is pretty ushy gushy in that it is fluff. It is absolutely that film, starring Leslie Manville, who we all love from Mike Lee's films, and
Yeah.
as it pertains to this film, Cyril from Phantom Thread. And she is a post-war widower who finds out that her husband died in World War II, but she's been hanging on to hope that he's still alive, and this is set in 1957. So she's a cleaning lady, and
No,
she's
I want to stop you right there because, like, just on that summary, it sounds like a Terrence Davies movie. It doesn't sound like
It
a comedy
isn't.
at all.
It sure isn't. Like it is very sweaty in its setup, but eventually that all coalesces around this character who infiltrates Christian Dior in Paris. And I say it's very sweaty because it takes about 30 minutes for her to get to Paris. And by the time she does, she is on a mission. She is bound and determined to get a 500 quid dress from Christian Dior because that's what she wants. And Isabelle Huppert is like runs the day-to-day at Christian Dior. And the second she meets her, it's like, get the street trash out of Christian Dior. And she walks in to the 10th anniversary show for Christian Dior. And Leslie Manville is so fucking charming in this. She is just like this really determined woman who's kind of been on her own and has one idea in her head, and she will do sort of anything to accomplish it. But she's so incredibly charming that literally everyone besides Isabelle Huppert is charmed to death by this woman. So she just absolutely infiltrates Paris society.
This isn't a true story, is it?
No, it's based on a novel. Maybe it's based on a true story, but it feels very based on like um Lady for a Day, that Frank Capra film, and then he
Mm.
remade it with Betty Davis. It is like My Man Godfrey or something like that.
Mhm.
But there's some romantic elements. Lambert Wilson shows up. It's a pretty darn good cast. And
Yeah.
it's very light, but she ultimately makes it worth recommending. Just on sheer like charm alone. And it's also really nice to see like the inside of a supposed Christian Dior in 1957. This is a film that is so
Production
like,
design-orama.
this is a film that is so baked, and this isn't a read. We love these people. It is so baked for the landmark Plaza Frontenac crowd that there is a fashion show midway through it, very much similar to the one that's in George Cukor's The Women. It's like it has purpose in the plot, but she's really just looking at dresses as we are for about 10 minutes. And I watched it with Aiden, my boyfriend, and we were just sitting there like, I love that one. Oh, that one, I don't like the pleating
It's
on that
window
one. And
shopping
then
in a
like,
film.
oh, satin, gross. Yeah. But it is that kind of film where it's all just sort of pleasant sensation.
It's
And
interesting that you say that Leslie Manville is so charming, that like her charm is what powers it, because I think like her reputation outside the UK has mostly been built on playing characters who are maybe a little bit abrasive. I think about like
abrasive, acerbic, or like
exhausting to be around.
like Another Year, which she's so
Oh
great
yeah.
in, where she plays like the single friend who just can't get it together. She is not that here. I mean, you could see how Mike Lee would make a version of this, and it would be a similar character. It would be a much more fascinating and interesting film. But what we have here is at least a really fun diversion, which is exactly what I needed at the end of that day. And then, so another female-led film. It's Mrs. Monroe Goes and Gets Looked At. Watch her.
Oh yeah. He's trying to set me up there and I completely flubbed it.
I tried. It was a stretch. You're fine.
Yeah, this is a film I was excited about. I wasn't able to see it in theater, unfortunately. Chloe Kuno. I think this might be her first film or maybe her sophomore film. But it stars Maika Monroe, who obviously, if you're a horror person, you know her from It Follows. And I think the snarky way to describe this movie is it's like an inverted It Follows or something, but I don't think it bears much resemblance. It is pretty much a thriller in the like Euro paranoia mode. There's a little bit of Polanski in it. So she plays a woman, the wife of a like hotshot marketing executive who is a Romanian American, and he gets the opportunity to get a transfer back to his home country, which he left when he was a little kid. He gets like some fancy, he'll get promoted into a fancy position if he goes back, and he sort of takes her with him. She goes not entirely willingly. There's some backstory about her being a failed actress or something. But suffice to say that it's one of those movies that they very obviously got shot in Romania because shooting in Romania is cheap. Right. But they use the setting really well. Like she's at sea, she can't speak the language. She's in this giant, like very continental apartment, all alone, rattling around, not knowing what to do with herself. And she notices the guy across the street staring at her 24/7 from his window into her window. And then she starts seeing him on the street everywhere, and it seems like he's following her. It's not really a horror film, and it's very scary in some parts, but it's not really a horror film. It's definitely more in a sort of thriller scenario. So I don't want to create the impression. I think it's important to create the impression. There's nothing supernatural going on here. This is really just a paranoia thing about a woman being stalked. But it's played very well, very smartly written, very smartly acted, beautifully shot film. And Chloe Kuno is doing some interesting things here with like, I don't want to say it's basic, but it doesn't feel like we get many films like this. So I guess it isn't that basic. The idea of women not being believed when they say they have a bad feeling about something or a bad feeling about a person. And every single person around her character, Remley's character, like goes out of their way to explain away or minimize everything that's happening to her, even as like the situation with this dude is escalating and getting weirder and freakier. But there's also some cool, like inverted, the follower being followed stuff where she starts stalking him to figure out like what his whole deal is. And then it turns into one of these flip situations where the cops start getting like nervous about her because she's doing all these weird, erratic things, possibly illegal things, because she's so determined to find this guy out. So very cool, very tense last 10 minutes where I was sort of white knuckling the poof. But it's definitely like was exactly what I needed. It is a very, very exceptionally well made thriller. Really just a 2 or 3, hander basically, but really well done. Chloe Kuno's Watcher. It was in theaters a couple months ago, and it's now in early access VOD pretty much everywhere. Unlike a lot of these early access deals, which charge you like $20 to rent something the first week it come out, this one's out like as normal price. It's like $5 to rent on it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I plan on watching it as soon as it gets dark outside.
Shudder is a distributor, so I have a feeling it's going to show up, like their imprint is on it. So I have a feeling it's going to show up on their streaming service as well eventually. So.
Same thing as Mad God, right? That's Shudder too. Is that available now?
Yeah, I think Mad God is exclusive to Shudder, so you can't rent it. You either have to see it in the theater, as Webster showed it a couple weeks ago, I believe, or you can watch it on Shudder.
And they're talking about a worth like $6 the month.
Yeah,
so
I have an
get
annual,
a free trial.
Yeah, I have an annual sub, and they do some. For those of you who don't know, you can get a Shudder subscription by itself, where you just pay them and use their web-based streaming service or their apps, but they also have like a over the top service on most other
Mm,
platforms. So like I have a subscription through Amazon and they have a whole channel and the same things that are available on their freestanding service or on their channel.
very cool. I've got something of a thriller to talk about as we
Yeah, the
round
latest
out
Claire. Yeah.
the latest Claire, Miss Claire Denis. It's the first of two films she's going to be having out this year. That is both, I keep calling it both sides of the wind, both sides of the blade. It is her pandemic film, and that it has a very small scale to it, but it's also has some very interesting things to say about the way people behave during the pandemic. I don't want to get into too much. That's just sort of shades of what's happening in it. It's Juliette Binoche. This is, I think, the third film she's made with her after the doubleheader from 2018 of Let the Sunshine In and High Life. And the melodrama, a modern melodrama about obsessing over the past and not being able to reconcile the past with your present. Juliette Binoche is a radio talk show host, and she is married to Vincent Lindon, who is an ex-con. In true Claire fashion. You're not really sure what's going on until you absolutely need to know what's going on, and maybe even beyond the point of needing to know, to where you're really suspended in a place of confusion, to where she's working on you with sensation over plot mechanics. This one, we were talking about Mrs. Harris being a little sweaty. This one has some sweaty bits to it too, but the tale of obsession within it is so palpable. That's what I love about Claire Denis' filmmaking. Is one, the way she tells stories is so incredibly unique, and if you don't really understand what's going on, you kind of do understand what's going on based upon her filmmaking of like physical intimacy and sensation and touch, and the gulf between people that sometimes occurs. She sees her ex, who's played by Grégoire Collomb, the great lead from Beau Travail, and he's a clairvoy. He's
Mhm.
a clairvoy is how I know him. And I have to say, I would also lose everything for him. I have also been obsessed with that man for years. So I'm watching it. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I would destroy it all. Um, there are really beautiful passages in this, like all great Claire Denis. It's not top tier, but like even the next tier, Claire Denis is probably better than most things you're going to see this year.
I've read a couple reviews of it, and I think the like post festival buzz has been a little bit muted. Like a
Mhm.
lot of people are sort of saying minor Claire, um,
Whatever.
whatever that means.
Right.
But I have one review I did read of it that I liked. I liked the review a lot. Said that it doesn't. They said intimated about the same thing that you're saying, which is that the backstory is ambiguous sometimes to the point of like exasperation, where you're not like getting a clear sense of what came before this, and what the relationships between everybody are and what their history is. But while that may be vague, it's always 100% clear. Like Juliette Binoche's like guilt and lust and defensiveness about her lust are like sort of always right there. Those are always like crystal clear because she's such a great actress.
I mean, there's a point where she first sees her ex, and she just like glimpses him and runs inside and goes into an elevator and starts repeating his name and clenches her fists in front of her stomach. It's like, it's
In that,
like you might not know what happened between these people, and you do find out a little bit, but the exact details are not very clear. But within that moment, you're like, I can either identify with that, or I see, and this woman, this performer is making me identify with it because she's just so incredible.
in the film, is the relationship with the ex, was it like a bad toxic relationship or was it just kind of something that ended eventually?
Well, I'm kind of skirting around it. It's
Oh, okay.
he comes back into her life because she left Grégoire Collomb for Vincent Lindon. This is me trying to say their French names right. Um,
You're braver than I wouldn't even.
he left or she left him for the other guy, is with the other guy. The other guy goes to jail for a very long time. And then he comes back into their lives because they want to enter a business venture together. And so it becomes a point of tension between it's this very terse love triangle. And it's about monogamy too, and about, what do you owe someone when you marry them and pledge your life to them? And what do you owe
Maybe the
someone
moral
else?
here is don't have business ventures with your ex.
Right. And it has a very like a sigh of relief ending that while it's a little silly, it's a similar ending to Let the Sun Shine In, which you're not really clear what's going to happen, but it feels very much relief. Before that, though, it is very tense, and it's the kind of tense thing. It's like, don't sleep with him, like just don't do it. You're gonna do it. I already did it. Yeah, it's great, and it's gonna be playing exclusively at Webster Film Series on the 15th, so everyone can see it there. All right. Well, we're going to let Diane Carson take it away for the rest of this episode. She's going to be talking about it's a remake of Bring Up Baby. Peter Bogdanovich's, one of my favorite Bogdanovich's, What's Up Doc, starring Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal.
In a rare glimpse of two artists at work, we are afforded an insight into how director Peter Bogdanovich, working with stars Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal, can manage to put these two performers together and create that almost indefinable thing, which is most simply described as a motion picture called What's Up, Doc?
Hello, my name's Cliff Freilich. I'm the executive director of Cinema St. Louis. Welcome to Golden Anniversaries. We're exploring this year the films of 1972. We're very pleased to be discussing What's Up, Doc tonight. But before we talk about the film itself, and I introduce the person who's going to be talking about the movie in more detail, I want to offer a few words of thanks and a few bits of business. First, we want to thank the St. Louis Public Library. The St. Louis Public Library is the sponsor of the Golden Anniversaries program. I want to mention also that not only are they helping present these virtual conversations that we're doing, and they will continue throughout most of the rest of the year. So I hope people will join us at the St. Louis Public Library. That's the Central Library downtown. Those presentations are going to be taking place every Saturday through October, and they'll be at 1 p.m. in most cases. The one exception is going to be our presentation of The Godfather, which is, of course, a very long movie, and we want to ensure that we have sufficient time to talk about it. And so we'll be starting that one at noon, we believe. But tonight, we're going to be discussing What's Up, Doc? And the person who's going to be doing that is my old colleague, Diane Carson. Diane is a emeritus professor, emerita professor of film at the St. Louis Community College, Merrimack, where she taught for many, many years. I think that she still keeps her hand in every now and again. And maybe she's officially retired at this point and is not going to be teaching at Webster University. She also used to do adjunct work at Webster, and she continues to write. She worked with me for many years at the Riverfront Times. I was Diane's editor and colleague as a film reviewer, and she continues to contribute film reviews to KDHX. She has many other talents. She's a documentarian. She's got a couple of projects that she did related to fair use, and she continues to write for publication elsewhere as well. So perhaps she'll mention a few of those things, including the fact that the film that she's discussing is a screwball comedy, and her thesis, our dissertation, I should say, was on screwball comedy. I don't know if that's accessible anywhere unless you actually take it out of the library at the school at which you did it. But nonetheless, I'm sure you've got some screwball comedy writing that you might be able to recommend of your own and others. So let's get the process rolling. Diane's going to take over. We'll talk. I'll ask her questions. I'll offer a few opinions of my own, but we want you to join the conversation as well. We want you to offer your own questions and comments. I will relay those to Diane. All right, let's turn things over now to Diane Carson.
Thank you, Cliff, very much. And I want to, first of all, compliment Cinema St. Louis for what they are doing and have done now for years to enhance and offer a wide diversity of cinema in various forms like this, but also the film festival, the Q Fest, so many other children's activities, so many things that they are doing to enhance film study, film awareness, film appreciation. And that is really credit to Cliff as executive director of Cinema St. Louis. And also, I just thank him for all the years of support and interaction we've had on film, which is always great fun. And so for that, I also say, please do participate in this. Discussions are always, to me, much more interesting and enjoyable than lectures are. So feel free to jump into the chat and offer some ideas. So what I'm going to do is to first explore the screwball genre, since this is an homage, admittedly and explicitly by Bogdanovich, to the classic screwball classics, I should say, especially bringing up Baby, Howard Hawks' 1938, which I'll make some comments on. So I want to start first with the macro, if you will, just about comedy. And as they say, a lot of times comedy doesn't get the credit that it deserves, but anybody who has ever tried it will probably think of the cliche about dying is easy, comedy is hard. And so I take it seriously as much as I find it just fun to immerse myself in. So I'm going to begin with the macro about comedy, and then we'll go to the micro with What's Up, Doc? If you like screwball comedies already, I hope this enhances your enjoyment. And if you're fairly new to them, I hope it develops some appreciation and you decide you want to go see some more of them. So the characteristic of most comedy is the temporary suspension of the natural laws of probability and logic. Actions do not have the consequences they do in real life. Thank goodness, huh? We should suspend disbelief to enjoy such comedies. I mean, I sometimes hear people say after they're watching a comedy, oh, that would never happen. It's like, of course not. It's a comedy. It's a film. Of course it wouldn't happen. Though, as we know also, stranger things happen in real life than sometimes what we see in movies. Okay. There usually is some involvement of the social order versus the individual. And there, of course, is a lot of exaggeration and incongruity. And if you've seen What's Up, Doc recently, you can think of all of these general ideas, how they apply to what Bogdanovich, who certainly knows comedy theory and film theory, it uses to employ in his film. The excesses, the frauds, the hypocrisies, and the follies of men and women are laughed at against the background of morality and moderation. You know, the silly things that happen are not, especially, I mean, think about, for example, the seminar that they're having and all the crazy things that happen there. That's not normal or moderate. Characteristics specifically of screwball comedies is that there often is a romantic couple. It's fast-paced. It is known for its witty repartee, outlandish situations, physical antics, eccentricity, vitality, and playfulness. That if you've seen any of the classic screwball comedies, you can immediately apply just about all of those characteristics to them. There is usually a displacement of sexual tension into the dialogue. That's because the screwball comedies came along in their heyday in 1934. The first one, It Happened One Night, which is exactly when the Hays Office and the production code came into effect. And so we couldn't be nearly as sexually explicit. So often there are double entendres, and there's a lot of tension and interaction that can't be deliberately, explicitly presented. They are often called comedies of equality. Marriage or remarriage is the concluding resolution. They're called comedies of equality because usually the woman has as equal role as the man does. If there is a marriage, it is usually deeply flawed. So you think of It Happened One Night, the first marriage that Ellie's involved in with King Wesley, Bringing Up Baby, The Awful Truth, His Girl Friday. The screwball term itself is supposedly introduced by It Happened One Night. Peter Warren, Clark Gable When he's asked if he loves Ellie Andrews, Claudette Colbert says to her father, "Yes, but don't hold that against me. I'm a little screwy myself." This comes after Peter asserts what she needs is a guy that'll take a sock at her once a day, whether she has it coming to her or not, as he's arguing in this dialogue with the father. So there sometimes is a kind of subtext of a little bit of misogyny there. The carrot scene and Bugs Bunny's carrots may also owe some debt to the "It Happened One Night" carrot scenes, because one of the most romantic scenes, and Ellie is saying she's hungry and they're in a field, and Peter goes off and comes back with carrots. And she says she's so scared she can't eat. The next day, when they're picked up by a guy who's going to scam them in a car, and that's, of course, the very famous scene, the hitchhiking scene, who picks them up, and he's hungry, she's hungry, and he starts eating carrots with part of the carrot hanging off, etc. And some people say that this, in some part, influenced the Bugs Bunny carrot routine. Okay, within the screwball comedies, there usually are some nervous explosions of slapstick. So it's not just witty repartee. Again, the humor in all of these depends on unpredictability, incongruity, which means difference between what one expects and what one gets. And those are the names there are just a couple of the theorists who've written about this. They're comedies of eventual commitment. It Happened One Night, Bringing Up Baby, Holiday, or reaffirmation. In other words, a marriage is reaffirmed. The Awful Truth, The Philadelphia Story, His Girl Friday. So in that way, they are conservative because they will bring a husband and wife together. There is an endorsement usually of conservative notions of work and of marriage. Class conflicts and differences are reconciled. And this comes from the classical Hollywood comedy book by Carnick and Jenkins. Often within these, and again, you'll see this even in, even in What's Up, Doc? They have to balance personal and professional commitments. So often there is a professional person involved in this. There are career problems. As you know, in What's Up, Doc? The importance of getting a grant is first and foremost. It drives a lot of the action. The same thing happens in Bringing Up Baby, where Cary Grant needs $1 million to continue his search. In romantic comedy, there usually is a strong emphasis on plot development, predictable resolutions, which is marriage, and central to the social order they reaffirm, versus anarchic comedies are primarily episodic, in other words, not as much plot driven. There is usually an exclusion of the protagonist from stable social relations by the end of the film, as opposed to inclusion in the screwball comedies. The person may be a perpetual wanderer or a trickster and is often very antisocial. That is not what you find in the screwball comedies. In them, there is a combination of sophisticated, fast-paced dialogue with zany action, comic violence, and, very mild violence, not violence like we think of as in killing people, and the kinetic energy of slapstick. Again, the displacement of overt sexuality because of the 1934 production code. Lots of double entendres. Even in It Happened One Night, there are quite a few times when, if you want to think along those lines, even at the very beginning on the bus, Clark Gable says to Ellie Andrews, when she takes her seat at the back of the bus, "That upon which you sit is mine." And he will claim it later on. There are a lot of allusions, there are metaphors. They may touch intimately, but humorously. There is often eccentric, unconventional behavior that was a form of social criticism in many ways. I mean, again, I'm using It Happened One Night as the essence of that. But those of you who've seen that, if you haven't, I highly recommend you go back and see it. And Peter Warren is a journalist, and he gives Ellie Andrews, who is very wealthy, a whole lecture about you're King Wesley, your father, you're all a bunch of hooey to me. You think you can buy your way out of everything. And so there really is embedded in this an endorsement of the working class and of conventional behavior in that way. Often fast bickering conversations. There is a lot of slapstick in these. A comic device or technique using physical accidents to provoke laughter. And Bogdanovich, again, I mentioned this, explicitly said he made What's Up, Doc as a tribute to 1930s and 40s romantic screwball comedies, especially bringing up Baby and the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons. Bogdanovich, in terms of the slapstick, Bogdanovich really knows film history. I mean, there are books, and he has done many, many lectures. There are several interviews with him that are available on YouTube. And if you just listen to him talk, he knew everybody. He tells story after story. I've seen him several times at Telluride, and he is incredibly entertaining as he talks about the people he knows and the film history that he understands. You know, it's not just talking about the people and silly events that happened. He really knows film history. Within this film, especially in terms of the slapstick, you can find specific references to Roscoe Arbuckle. Most people call him Fatty Arbuckle, but I just finished a brand new book on Buster Keaton in which they point out that Roscoe never liked to be called Fatty and never was by his friends. So I'm not calling him Fatty anymore. Roscoe Arbuckle, Buster Keaton, Mabel Dorman, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, the Three Stooges, plus in sound film, Cary Grant, Carol Lombard, Katharine Hepburn, Rosalind Russell, Irene Dunn. You may have some of your own favorites in terms of ability to do slapstick. I think Cary Grant was probably one of the best because he was so physically adept at even doing backflips, as you may remember. Okay. I think I skipped over something again. I think this is jumping. Okay, I'm back there. Okay. I don't know why when I hit this button, it's going like a couple forward. Okay. More to What's Up, Doc now. Let's go more to the micro. You know, that's kind of the overview of screwball comedies. Bogdanovich said he chose San Francisco to spoof The Chase in Bullitt, which was 1968, including the hubcap bouncing off. So you may remember that as you watch The Chase, watching that hubcap bounce off, which of course, I think people used to count how many hubcaps came off in Bullitt. I've never gone back to do that. But anyway, that's kind of a famous aspect of Bullitt. The Chase cost a quarter of the film's $4 million budget. So that's how important Bogdanovich felt The Chase had to be. They had no permit to drive down the concrete steps in Alta Plaza Park, and the scars are still visible today. If you look at that scene after they come down the steps, you can see where the concrete is knocked off. They shot many scenes or several scenes at the San Francisco airport, the first and last scenes, the opening scene at the TWA baggage claim area, the next to the last, the upstairs departure. The San Francisco Hilton was used for the Bristol Hotel. The ledge scene was shot. If you can go through and find where almost every one of these very specific outdoor scenes was shot, if you're interested in that kind of specificity. So there's your chase scene down the streets of San Francisco. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Peter Bogdanovich, since he did the film. He directed the film. He was born in 1939 and he died just this past January 6th. He was 82 years old. Before this, the film he made right before this was The Last Picture Show, which got 8 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay. Ben Johnson and Cloris Leachman won Oscars for supporting roles. He didn't win any of the others. After What's Up, Doc was Paper Moon. His parents fled the Nazis. They said, in fact, he was conceived in Europe and born in New York. His father, Borislav, was a painter and a pianist, a Serbian Orthodox Christian. His mother, Kerma Robinson, was from a wealthy Austrian Jewish family. And in 1939, they decided they had to get out of Europe. Peter was first an actor. He studied with Stella Adler, who, of course, is one of the luminaries of acting instructors. In the early 60s, he programmed movies at the Museum of Modern Art, which is one of the ways he learned movies. He programmed them, he was immersed in them, and he was an adept and serious student. He was influenced by the French film critics, especially Truffaut. And then he began directing for Roger Corman, which is where a lot of very good directors started. But his stories, again, there are interviews with him on YouTube. His stories about directing for Roger Corman are pretty funny because that was like as cheap and down and dirty as you could get, but you learned how to make a movie fast and for little money and make it work. At least they hoped. Bogdanovich was a writer, actor, producer, critic, and film historian. He also did a couple of documentaries. He did directed by John Ford, and he tells great John Ford stories. He did The Great Buster on Buster Keaton, a celebration in 2018. He was an author of over 10 books, including with friends like Howard Hawks, who directed Bringing Up Baby, hence his wanting to remake that film, and Alfred Hitchcock. He also worked with his friend Orson Welles on Welles's last film, The Other Side of the Wind. Since movies aren't made by machines, I think it's important to know something about the people who contributed their expertise and talent to making a film that stands the test of time, which What's Up, Doc certainly does. The cinematographer was Laszlo Kovacs, who died in 2007. He was Hungarian-born, and with Vilmos Zsigmond shot the 1956 Hungarian Revolution before he and Vilmos escaped through Austria, actually sneaking film out. Kovacs got 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, and he was a director of photography on more than 70 films. I mention this because good directors surround themselves with great talent. I always told my students, get the best people around you possibly can. All they're going to do is make you look better. And somebody like Bogdanovich knew who the great talents were in Hollywood. And because he was such a dream by many people's stories to work with, he had a lot of people who were happy to sign on and work with him. Kovacs shot 6 of Bogdanovich's films. Targets, which came before What's Up, Doc. These are in the order in which they were made. What's Up, Doc, Paper Moon, At Long Last Love, Nickelodeon, and Mask. Those are the ones that Kovacs shot. When somebody comes back and shoots over and over again with the director, you can bet there's a good working relationship there. Kovacs also shot, these are not Bogdanovich's, of course, but shot Shampoo, New York, New York, Ghostbusters, Miss Congeniality, The King of Marvin Gardens, and did extra cinematography on Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Last Waltz. If you're interested in learning more about Laszlo, and he is a fascinating character, there's a 2008 documentary called No Subtitles Necessary, Laszlo and Vilmos, which documents the 50-year friendship between those two men. I highly recommend it. It's really good doc. Additional crew. Again, movies aren't made by machines. The editor was Verna Fields, who was born in St. Louis, 1918, died in 1982. She had credits for Jaws, Sugarland Express, American Graffiti, Paper Moon, Medium Cool before this film. Again, a good director, a confident director gets great crew people to work with him. The music in this film is very important. Artie Butler, uncredited, is the person who did the music. He also did Bob and Carol and Ted Nallis, For Pete's Sake, Grease, and Annie Hall. Production design, Polly Platt, born in 39. The 42, by the way, because that's when Butler was born, and he is still alive. To 2011, she also did Terms of Endearment, broadcast news, and she was married to Bogdanovich from 62 to 72 through this film. I don't know what this film had to do with them parting, but there it is. Okay, I'm waiting for this to decide to go forward. Okay, more about the music. George Gershwin's Someone to Watch Over Me is whistled by Judy, Barbra Streisand, of course, outside the drugstore. Again, the music we often don't pay a lot of attention to, but it probably deserves more attention than we often give it. And on this one, again, especially with Bogdanovich. He was very insistent on choosing songs that said something, songs that reinforced ideas. And so, Someone to Watch Over Me, there you go. The opening scene in the background is Please Don't Talk About Me When I'm Gone from One Froggy Evening, which is a Looney Tunes cartoon. And he tries with this to invoke this cartoonish ambiance, the context, as the transition from our normal world into this world. And a lot of the music used is all diegetic, as in Bringing Up Baby It Is. In other words, there isn't a lot of background music. When the music is used, it usually is foregrounded. One of the things, and this is why I mentioned the song at the very beginning, I've often, again, when I was teaching production, I would often tell students the opening scenes are so important. The first second that the light hits the screen, because what you have to do is to take me from my normal world into the world of the film. You have to let me know if I'm supposed to be frightened, if I'm supposed to be tense, if I'm supposed to relax and be ready to laugh. And this opening scene, whether we're aware of it that much or not, subconsciously takes us there. Subconsciously and maybe consciously, it helps us make a transition into this cartoonish world, which is, of course, the world we're going to enter. It's an important film in many ways. It was a significant film. It was the highest grossing picture of 1972. It won the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Comedy Written Directly for the Screen for Buck Henry, who also did The Graduate and Catch-22. Whenever I mention these people, I keep thinking, Bogdanovich just had such great people involved with this film. It's so important to recognize and acknowledge how smart he was to do that. And David Newman and Robert Benton, who also worked on Bonnie and Clyde. The story was by Bogdanovich, as you know, a remake of Bringing Up Baby, loosely based on Herman Rauscher's novel, A Glimpse of Tiger. It grossed $66 million on a $4 million budget. Again, third highest grossing film of the year after The Godfather and The Poseidon Adventure. It was re-released in 73 the next year and grossed another $3 million, and in 1975, another $6 million. It has an 89% approval rating with 44 reviews, if you care about that. And most of them are really praising and glowing and extremely overwhelmed with how good the film is. One of them saying Barbra Streisand was never more likable than in this energetic, often hilarious screwball farce. It was number 68, considered ranked 68 of the 100 greatest love stories in American cinema, 61 of the greatest American comedies by the AFI, 58 the funniest screenplays by the Writers Guild of America. So this film really has been acknowledged. It's not just that this is 50 years old. It's that this is an important film that's 50 years old. Numerous homages in it to silent and sound films, ending with, this may be the funniest one, with Judy Streisand saying, you remember this on the plane, love means never having to say you're sorry. To which Howard O'Neill replies, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And of course, that comes from Ryan O'Neill in Love Story, which was done in 1970 with Ali MacGraw. Okay, the basic plot. Two researchers have come to San Francisco to compete for a research grant in music. The man, Dr. Howard Bannister, seems a bit distracted. And that was before he met a strange woman, Judy Maxwell, who's devoted her life to confusing and embarrassing him. At the same time, a woman has her jewels stolen, and a government whistleblower arrives with his stolen top secret papers. 4 identical bags cause the confusion. Howard's with his igneous tambula rocks that have musical properties, Mr. Smith's with top secret government papers, and Mr. Jones, the government agent who's trying to recover them, wealthy Mrs. Van Hoskins' excessive jewelry collection, and Judy's bag of clothing and a large dictionary. So these 4 identical bags, which, it's almost like watching a shell game to try to figure out which bag is where at some points, cause a lot of confusion and embarrassment for people. The main cast, Streisand, of course, is Judy Maxwell, probably why Howard Bannister is a musicologist. Madeline Kahn as Eunice Burns, and could there have been a better introduction to Madeline Kahn than this? Kenneth Mars as Hugh Simon, who is Howard's competitor. Austin Pendleton as Frederick Larrabee. Liam Dunn as the judge, Judge Maxwell. Michael Murphy as Mr. Smith, who never says anything. And Mel Blanc, of course, as Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig, archival footage in the last scene. Okay, as you know, it is a remake of Bringing Up Baby. The O'Neill character, David Huxley, Cary Grant was his parallel in Bringing Up Baby. Streisand was Susan Vance, Katharine Hepburn. I think there is real chemistry between Grant and Hepburn. Grant is befuddled but energetic, acting and reacting. O'Neill, for me, is a little too clueless. He could react, for me, a bit more, but that's probably because I have Grant in my head. And I mean, who could equal Grant? As Huxley, this is the Grant character in Bringing Up Baby. He's a paleontologist going after the last bone needed for his brontosaurus skeleton, an intercostal clavicle. Baby, by the way, is a leopard, in case you haven't seen that film, 1938, and Anarchy Reigns. As in Bringing Up Baby, they move more and more into carnivalesque territory. In other words, more and more into the anarchic area. They cross the boundaries of social decorum and expected conventions, and it increases, it builds in a very nice way. The traditional goal, of course, is for Streisand to snare her prey, the man at the center of the circus. Reversals is that Howard is the butt of the jokes. You know, she is in control. She drives the plot and the action. That's one reason these are sometimes called comedies of equality, because the woman is in some conventional films pretty much the butt of the jokes, but in these, she's the one who is driving the action. And she particularly enjoys destroying the trappings of intellectual society. This is one of the funnier scenes during that dinner scene when they're all underneath the table. I don't know if you noticed, by the way, his, and they make a point of his name tag being upside down. But there's a point later when suddenly it's right side up and nobody says anything about it. So I don't know, maybe somebody just fixed it. It's hard to know. Okay, the critical reception for this film. John Simon, who was supposedly the basis for Hugh Simon, wrote that Barbra Streisand looked like a cross between an aardvark and an albino rat, surmounted by a platinum-coated horse bun, calling it all a heavy-handed attempt at nostalgia. That may be because he knew that he was the model for Hugh Simon and didn't like it. Don't know. However, the consensus is that it was a vibrant comedy that successfully captures the quality of those wonderful 1930s screwball classics. Director Bogdanovich makes the viewing and the homage worthwhile with an energetic performance from Streisand as a crazy co-ed who manages to disrupt the lifestyles of a square musicologist and his fiancée. O'Neill and Kahn, lovely in her film debut. There is great support from Mars Murphy and a young Randy Quaid. Roger Ebert once said, this is a quote from another critic, that great movies should feel fresh every time you watch them. I think that's a pretty good yardstick for really good films. But I've come to wonder if this phrase applies to the beloved comedies from my early years. This is Valero writing. What's Up, Doc was clearly designed as a vehicle for Streisand. Yep, sure. Like most of her films, regardless of who directs them, this one is also a showcase for her singing. Well, wouldn't we be disappointed if it weren't? I mean, if we watched the entire movie and never heard her sing. On the downside, the anxiously awaited climactic chase scene in San Francisco was a bit of a letdown. Well, maybe. What's Up, Doc was obviously made in simpler times when we had yet to see a character crashing through a large window pane. That happens so many times in silent film comedies, by the way. When we had never seen a car's door falling off as the punchline to it being crashed repeatedly, when we hadn't yet seen dozens of chases in the steep hills of San Francisco. In other words, the writer is saying there's too much of this, which is also pedestrian that we've seen so many times, with vehicles at every intersection going on opposite directions to highlight the tension. It was also made at a time when hundreds and hundreds of movie characters were yet to fall into water for no good reason. Maybe it wasn't this sequence that I think that became uninteresting. It was the audience's tastes that changed through the years. So there are positive and there are, well, maybe it's a bit too tired kind of reactions to the film. I'll be interested for those of you who are in person with this, not watching it as it's recorded, what you have to say about that. But most, over 180 of the IMDb reviews, praise the film, and this one strikes more of a balance. The film doesn't deserve superlative compliments. It's the usual cocktail of misunderstandings, comedy of errors and manners, with a few romantic reliefs, a fight scene where one gets a cream pie in his face, and a chase that makes good use of San Francisco's urbanism. It's one gag after another, and we're never left with the impression that anything matters more than gags. But, of course not. They're not supposed to in this film. So what we get is a great set of screwball gags, but too perfectly manufactured to constitute a screwball classic. It's a farce. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's a joke. Well, of course, it is. That is the nature of screwball comedies. Still, haven't you noticed how many people mix up the anything can happen with their philosophy of a joke? Well, anything should be able to happen in a joke. But this is more of a balance between this is good, this is maybe not so good, the gags maybe take over too much. But if you enjoy the gags, I don't think that's negative in terms of how quickly the film moves from one gag to another.
All right. Thanks for that. Obviously, that gives us all a really good grounding in the film and also its antecedents, particularly Bringing Up Baby. We have a couple people watching, and one of them, Suzanne Scherer, says, I first saw this when I was 8 years old. I loved it then, and it just keeps getting better. I wanted to start with that because we had a brief conversation a few days ago, and I mentioned the fact that I had not seen this film in quite a number of years. I've seen it several times, but it's been probably 30 years since I last saw it. And I was really pleased by when you revisit a film, oftentimes something that you really liked at one point is no longer quite as good as you remember it being. And this film, I thought, legitimately held up from the point of view of it being able to elicit real belly laughs from me. Comedy in particular sometimes doesn't age well. And I was pleased to see that this film actually did retain its ability, at least in my case, to make me laugh. Yet you said that you were slightly disappointed, I think, in going back and watching the film again, and that your own estimation of the film perhaps I don't think it necessarily shrunk too dramatically, but that it didn't quite measure up in the way that you had hoped. Can you talk a little bit about why you thought that perhaps it didn't hold up as well as you were perhaps hoping it would?
Yes, as I mentioned to you that, I think my problem was that I kept thinking about Bringing Up Baby. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, in Bringing Up Baby, there was so much more energy. There were sparks flying, Katharine Hepburn and Cary. And then, as I thought about it later after we were talking about it, I thought, well, that's really kind of being unfair to What's Up, Doc? Because, Bringing Up Baby is brilliant. Howard Hawks is brilliant. And I'm sure Bogdanovich, were he still alive, and I'm sure even then he would have said that Hawks just had a magic touch. And there were also times, and this is more His Girl Friday than Bringing Up Baby, but another Hawks film, because I love Hawks so much, that when they did the dialogue scenes in His Girl Friday, he would tell them, okay, that was a great take, now do it a third faster. And everything just went so fast. And there were times that I wanted that speed to increase. I wanted it to be a little bit more the His Girl Friday. I wanted it to, but as I say, I think I'm being unfair because those 30s and 40s classic screwball comedies to me are just, and maybe I should go back and look at them some more now too, but they're so perfect in the gags, if you will, the dialogue, and maybe some of it is there was so much more sexual tension there too. Then, it's kind of like in 72, there's still a lot of things they can't do, but it's a lot freer and more relaxed than it could have been in 1934, 38.
Although, it's interesting. I was surprised when I pulled up the IMDb page in order for me to have all my names in front of me. It
Mhm.
saw that What's Up Doc was rated G. It's
Yeah.
actually a very innocent movie from that point of view. Whereas on the other hand, I did rewatch Bringing Up Baby, which I've seen many times.
Yeah.
Uh, and that has an extraordinary number of double entendre.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't happen one night if you go back and rewatch that. And you're thinking, whoa, how did this get past the censors?
Quite sophisticated. And that, of course, whereas It Happened One Night was right on the cusp of the production code. In the case of Bringing Up Baby, he managed to squeak all of that by Joseph Green. So it was pretty amazing that they were able to get by with what they did.
Yes.
And yes, it is unfair on some levels to compare any film to Bringing Up Baby, which I consider to be one of the funniest films ever made. And,
I agree. I agree. And, just the wildness of the leopard. And, it's like I'm wanting something wilder to happen. And that's why I say I'm really being unfair because I'm having all of that stuff from Bringing Up Baby when they're out in the woods and they're chasing after his intercostal clavicle and he can't find his bone and all those sexual things. And I'm thinking, well, where is this? Where is it? But that's that movie, and that's why I say after we talked about it, I thought, well, I'm really being kind of unfair to What's Up, Doc. I mean, this is a good film on its own merits.
yeah, and Bringing Up Baby has its fair share of slapstick, of course, but I think that What's Up Doc not only draws on Bringing Up Baby, but as you correctly pointed out in your intro, it very much sort of references Keaton. Of course, Bogdanovich made an entire film about Keaton,
Yes.
and Harold Lloyd, and the sort of really more robust slapstick that both of them engaged in. That, of course, culminates in that massive chase sequence.
Yeah. And I like that. It's like, if you're going to do slapstick, go for it. And so in that way, I love this. It's like, go all out for it. Don't hold back. Give them the pie in the face. Don't pussyfoot around with it. No, I totally agree on that.
I'm curious, what did you think of Streisand's performance in the film? I'm a little ambivalent, I have to say.
I am too. I found it a little flat, to be honest. I thought her expression too many times was just the same. It's just the kind of that slide that I had in there. It's just too much lacking expressiveness and lacking a physicality that, again, to be unfair and go back to Bringing Up Baby, that Katharine Hepburn had. I mean, they put that whole golf scene at the beginning of Bringing Up Baby because she could have been a professional golfer. And so, they're calling on and relying on some of the physical things that these people can do. And what is it, Holiday, when Cary Grant does the back flip at the end of the film. And I mean, there is a physicality there with some of the best classic screwball comedy actors that I didn't feel with Streisand, or honestly, even there were times I'm looking here at Ryan and I'm thinking, now, is he mentally incapacitated or but that's in the tradition of, the absent-minded professor who might be brilliant in one area, but knows nothing about how to tie his shoes or, start the car kind of thing.
We want to get a couple comments here. Paul Stark said, "Bless you, Polly Platt," giving a shout out to, of course, Bogdanovich's ex-wife, now the late Polly Platt, who also was a writer and as well as a production designer. She did a Pretty Baby, actually.
Yes.
Film, but you asked. They had split up actually before What's Up, Doc. The odd thing about them continuing to collaborate is the fact that she was willing to do that, even though he was already with Sybil Shepherd, whom he fell in love with during the last picture.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So Polly Platt was clearly a woman who could sort of segregate her emotions.
And a real professional, and good for calling attention to her, because as I said, too often, and I too, I get all wrapped up in the film and the story and the actors, and I think, hold it, somebody did this. When I saw Laszlo Kovacs and Polly Platt and, all of the people who worked on this. And as I said, that really is the Bogdanovich's credit also. I mean, that's like when Wells went to Hollywood and he got the best people he could because he didn't know how to make a movie. And so he got the best people That's what a good director does. Now, Bogdanovich knew how to make a movie. Roger Corman drummed that into his brain. But he still knew you get the best people there are, and your movie is going to shine because of that. And he really did. So, yeah, credit to Polly Platt and all of the people who worked on this.
Suzanne has a few other comments here. I think
good.
that holds up so well is because Bogdanovich is so well-versed in film history, which you also reference Belmage's work, and they are timeless. She then follows it up with no one can top Cary Grant in his screwball comedies. As much as I like Ryan O'Neal, he can't live up to Grant. I don't know that anyone can honestly live up to Cary Grant. If people aren't familiar with his full filmography, you really need to take a close look, because the thing about Grant that people, I think, have a tendency to forget is just how much of a range he actually had. We think of Cary Grant as this persona, Cary Grant, and as if he didn't have actually acting chops, when in fact, he's really quite remarkable, both in comedy and in drama. I mean, just take a look at his work with Hitchcock versus the work that he did with Hawks, and you'll see vast differences. And even within his work with Hawks, put his character as Walter Burns in His Girl Friday versus David Huxley in Bringing Up Baby, and they're wildly different. Wildly different. So
you're absolutely right. I'm glad you said that. His range, and shout out to Suzanne. She really knows her film history too. So I'm delighted that she's weighing in on this. Cary Grant went to some kind of an awards thing or something one time, and he was walking in, getting his name tag and all, and the person said, "Oh my gosh, you're Cary Grant. I wish I were Cary Grant." And he said, "So do I."
Grant himself couldn't live up to his screen image, obviously.
Oh, he didn't.
There's a couple of excellent biographies of Grant that are recently out that I would certainly recommend, including one by Scott Eyman that I think is really quite good. So read more about Mr. Cary Grant and see more of his films. I wanted to first we have Chris here. He actually has a comment. Chris Clark, my colleague. He says, the film's pitch perfect on all levels, including the brilliant mind of Buck Henry and his whip-smart writing. We need to qualify that slightly in the sense that Buck is one of the major contributors here, but you don't want to discount the contributions of David Newman and Robert Benton, who are obviously hugely talented on their own. Bonnie and Clyde, as you referenced, and of course Benton went on to have a very successful career as a writer-director, including things like Kramer versus Kramer and Places Apart. Did you want to say anything more about Buck Henry?
Well, he's fabulous. I mean, just absolutely fabulous. And again, I think this is credit to the fact, or acknowledgement of the fact, that you get the best writers you can. I mean, Bogdanovich says, this is what we're going to remake, but we have to have a script. We got to do something. And so what do? Buck Henry, I mean, everybody knew how good he was. And I think it's also to Bogdanovich's credit that all these people wanted to work with him. And, he is, I have to say, you've seen him several times at Telluride also, I think, Cliff. And he is just charming in telling stories. Of course, I don't know what he's like to work with behind the scenes, but just charming in telling stories. And that these people lined up to work with him several times, I think says that that's really who he was, behind the scenes, working on productions, etc. So, I mean, you got to have a script. You got to have a script. Somebody's got to write the words. I mean, the joke always was, if you don't want a good screenwriter, just send the people out there and tell them to ad lib. Okay. Yeah. The other thing I have to say, though, about Bogdanovich is it's kind of bold of him to decide to remake Bringing Up Baby, knowing how great Howard Hawks was. And John Huston, before he made The Maltese Falcon, which had been made previously, famously said, you never remake a good movie. You only remake bad movies, because then you're bound to look good. But if you remake a really good movie, what do you think's going to happen? So, I have to say it's both bold, maybe arrogant, but also confident of Bogdanovich, who, as we've said several times, boy, did he know his film history. And did he know film theory? And he wrote, and I don't think you can say as much about what a well-educated, complex education he had. he studied with Stella Adler, for heaven's sakes. I mean, he had an incredible experience as a film professional in all aspects of what that entails.
Yeah, it's also it's always good when we have somebody who emerges out of film criticism and film curation as a director. I certainly endorse Bogdanovich from that point of view as well. Another comment from Suzanne referencing our brief discussion of Streisand and her perhaps a lack of appeal by comparison with Katharine Hepburn in Bringing Up Baby. Says, it always seemed to me that she was trying too hard to be cute. Hepburn never seemed like she was trying. And I think that's a very accurate summation.
Good point, Suzanne. As always, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think she's kind of posing for the camera. Barbara is kind of posing. And it's like, no, just be natural and be silly. Let yourself be silly, especially in a comedy. You have to just, throw pride aside. And I think that's why I had mentioned earlier, I said, I would love to have seen Madeline Kahn in that role, because she doesn't have that self-important, I have to look good, except, she'll just throw herself into it. I can see her just throwing herself into the stream like they do in Bringing Up Baby. And, she would just be unfettered, where I think Barbara Streisand was a little too neat and prim.
Well, she was infamous, of course, for only being allowing herself to be photographed from one side, which obviously speaks to some of that. Paul Stark weighs in and notes, on a personal level, my older sister found a very close replica of that bag and traveled with it in airports throughout the 1970s. I'm sure she probably got a few looks from fellow travelers who were familiar with what's up top.
Oh, yeah. Wonder if it had any jewels in it or papers. I said, I felt like I was watching a shell game sometimes with that, because when they'd open it, it'd be like, I don't remember which bag this is or what they're going to, is it going to be underwear? Is it going to be jewels? Is it going to be top secret? I don't remember. I did feel like I was watching a shell game and I was losing.
Yeah, it was, in fact, I got sort of, I think overly invested in trying to keep track as I was watching the movie. And finally I said, it's not important. Let that go.
It's a MacGuffin. It's the MacGuffin, it's what makes the plot go. It is of no importance whatsoever, Hitchcock would say.
Suzanne weighs in again and agrees that Madeline Kahn could have made the telephone book funny, and indeed she could. It's unfortunate she's no longer with us. Before we go, we're almost out of time, believe it or not. I wanted to get you a few of your favorite screwball comedies, the films that you think are essential. You've already mentioned several, obviously. Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, It Happened One Night. Do you want to weigh in with any more that you'd like to see?
The Awful Truth, definitely. Again, Cary Grant. Holiday, again, Cary Grant. 20th Century with Carol Lombard. It's
another Hawks film.
Another Hawks film. You can see I can kind of gravitate to all these Hawks things. I think that's really good. I say I like Holiday because it's one of those that does go more after the rich people, as does My Man Godfrey. There are several of those in which wealth versus who's really the working class in this portion. Again, I mentioned It Happened One Night. Who has the true values, the real human being, as Clark Gable says. So those would be the ones, the classics from the 30s are the ones I really like.
And of course, many great directors in there: Leo McGarry, George Cukor, Gregory LaCava. I wanted to mention one film. I was curious as to whether I should do it, which I had not managed to see up until maybe a year ago, and that's Theodora Goes Wild. Which I had read about but never had an opportunity to see it. And I found it absolutely terrific. It stars, of course, one of the great actresses, Irene Dunn. But what I was really shocked to discover is that the director of that film, Richard, and I'm going to screw up his last name, I'm certain, as far as the pronunciation, it's Boleslavsky. He was an aide de camp to Stanislavski. I've just read a book on the method. Great book, by the way. It's just recently out about the method. Both
Our review of it in the New Yorker. Yeah.
I highly recommend it. But he then eventually came over to the U.S. and became a director. But he worked in theater with Stanislavski and was sort of one of the progenitors of the method. So that was fascinating to me. I certainly would have never connected Theodora Goes Wild to the mess.
That is a great film, and it was so hard to see. I had to go to the Library of Congress when I was working on my dissertation on screwball comedies to see it. You couldn't find it anywhere. Where did you see it? It
was on Turner Classic Movies. Yeah, it's now more available. But yeah, at one point, obviously, it was not as accessible. So yeah, and Suzanne, by the way, weighs in. She agrees with yours. She says Holiday, The Awful Truth, and then she also says My Favorite Wife. She is my favorite wife.
Yeah, I forgot.
The Irene Dunn fan.
Oh, she's great. Nothing Sacred. I forgot that. Ball of Fire. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck is another
Hawks. Another
Hawks. Which I got a little partial there, but Ball of Fire is great, and The Lady Eve.
Preston Sturgis. Of course, you can't go wrong with Preston Sturgis.
Yes. Yeah. So, the couple more, we'll keep people busy for a long time.
I also want to mention a book that if you want to read more about a screwball comedy, I think that a great primer is James Hardy's Romantic Comedy in Hollywood. It's an absolutely essential text. It's from Lubitsch to Sturgis, and we failed to mention Ernst Lubitsch, and we could certainly include any number of his films, which don't really qualify as screwball comedies, but from a romantic comedy point of view, he is, of course, the master.
And I agree. Harvey's book's on my shelf over there. Yep, it's really, I second that recommendation.
All right, well, we have reached the conclusion. Thank you, as always, Diane, for your willingness to talk. We'll be inviting you back, I have no doubt, in the future, although I won't necessarily be the person conversing with you. We'll see, since I'm going to be retiring in a few months, but I will keep my hand in. All right. Thanks so much. Again, shout out to the St. Louis Public Library one more time, our sponsor. And there's quite a variety of films that were on offer in 1972.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Diane.
Great. And thanks to Cinema St. Louis again for all you do. You all don't get thanked often enough.
Well, we appreciate it.